Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is 4 o'clock. It is Tuesday, and I am Hank Phillippi Ryan, inviting you and welcoming you to join us here at Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze. As I said, I'm Hank Phillippi Ryan, your host. I'm the author of 13 going on 14 novels of suspense. The newest one is Her Perfect Life, which you see casually behind me, and my new one, The House Guest, which comes out in February, which is sort of Gaslight meets Thelma and Louise. So you will hear about that when the time comes. But the time has come right now for me to introduce to you an author who you need to know, who's written a book that you need to read. His name is Lev AC Rosen, and this book is Lavender House. It is pub day for Lavender House. This is such a, oh, thank you, Lev, for the hardcover. And I'm going to ask you all the secrets of that book coming up, all the secrets of the cover design coming up. But this book is out today, and I have called it Raymond Chandler meets Agatha Christie meets La Cage aux Folles. And this is exactly what it is. It's marvelous. It's immersive. It's smart. It's meta. It's irresistible. It's heartbreaking and honest. It's set in San Francisco in 1952. It will teach you things. It will reveal things. It will honestly, truly change your life. And that is all in one book. And that is Lavender House by Lev AC Rosen. If you don't believe me, but you should, let me read you a little bit of the Library Journal starred review. Oh, look, everybody is here. Pamela Fry-Priest is here, and Shannon Hansen is here, and Anissa is here, and Catherine. Janine is here. Catherine is here. Janine, again, wonderful. I know Anissa loved this book as well. She is a marvelous reviewer and joins me in the acclaim. And Jenna Blum is here. So we are full. We are full. This is marvelous. Can't do. Oh, and Janine says, saw Lavender House in my indie bookstore. And I hope you walked out with it under your little arm, Janine, because you need Lavender House. Library Journal gives it a star. That is not easy to do. It says, a superbly written, I just don't even need to read any more than that, right? A superbly written 1950s set novel that deftly displays a Raymond Chandler-esque way with words, combined with the same insightful characterization found in the crime fiction of Ross MacDonald and Patricia Highsmith. Got to love that. Rosen's deftly clued, noir-tinged plot successfully walks the line between hope and heartbreak, all while thoroughly exploring the role of family in our lives. Doesn't that seem like it would be difficult to do? And Lev has hit it out of the ballpark with Lavender House from Forge Books. And I adored this, as you know. So welcome, Lev. I'm finally going to let you talk. Welcome, Lev.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for that very kind introduction.
Well, tell us about launch day. I know this isn't your first book, and we will talk about that later. But this is the first of this kind of novel. What was it like to launch it?
It's my team at Forge has been so amazing. Just everyone there has been so supportive and has made me feel so heard that I feel strangely calm today. Like normally today is such a book launch day can feel very anxious, but today I'm feeling like, yeah, some trepidation. Yeah, we'll see where everything goes, but I'm feeling generally just sort of like, this is very nice. This is nice. The only thing I'm really anxious about is making sure I say thank you to everyone who congratulates me on social media, and I will miss people. So that's just something I have to deal with.
Well, it's interesting because the buzz about this book has been fabulous. Every time I mention it, which I do all the time, people say, oh, I've heard about that. Oh, I've heard so many good things about that. That must be interesting for you to hear.
Yeah, it's definitely especially coming out of young adults, most recently. Certainly people hear about your books, and certainly I've developed an audience, and Camp did very well, but it's one of those things where my last one did well, and now I'm in a new area, and now there's all this excitement, and it just feels very welcoming. Like the community, which I was, the mystery community, which I was very nervous about, especially coming in with a very queer book. I got some passes on this from editors that were borderline homophobic. So I was prepared for a cold welcome but everyone has been so kind and everyone has been so enthusiastic and excited. And that is the best kind of feeling, I think.
Well, what a journey you have had with this book. But I can tell you that the acclaim and the affection for this book is quite astonishing and not surprising. Actually, it's quite wonderful. I see more and more people arriving here today. Here's Hannah Mary McKinnon, who was with us this morning on First Chapter Fun, and she is saying we're absolutely thrilled you're part of the crime community. Welcome, and that she speaks for all of us. Renee is saying, thanks for talking with Hank today. You're having a busy day. And we have some more questions. There's Diane Dick saying the cover is gorgeous, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So welcome you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to A Mighty Blaze. If you don't know about A Mighty Blaze, it was started 2.5 years ago, crazily enough, at the beginning of the pandemic by the fabulous powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us all talking about books and keep us chatting and keep our community together, and to introduce you to new authors and new books, and also remind you of your favorite authors and their upcoming books. And that's why we are all here. Quickly, let me tell you two things. One is, let me introduce you again very formally now to Lev Rosen. I will read you his formal bio. Lev AC Rosen writes books for people of all ages, including Camp, which he referred to earlier, which was the best book of the year from Forbes, Elle, and the Today Show, among others, and is a Lambda finalist and ALA Rainbow List top 10. He lives in New York City with his husband and a very small cat. I see your cat is walking around, so maybe we'll see the
He
kid.
might show up and demand attention, yes.
Okay, that's great. Well, we welcome cats. All cats are welcome, and dogs. And you can find Lev online at his website and on social media. You guys know how to do social media. Lev AC Rosen, please follow him. So this book, Lavender House, and I almost forgot, Lev and Forge are giving away a copy of Lavender House to one lucky commenter today. So ask Lev about Billy Porter. Ask Lev about the cover. Ask Lev about his earlier books. Ask Lev about his cat. Ask Lev about how he did research, whatever it is you want, or just general acclaim and applause for this marvelous book. So tell us about this book. What's between the covers? What are we getting? How would you describe it?
Well, my favorite description is yours that you just get, which is the Chandler meets Christie meets La Cage aux Folles. And I think that it is, I believe you said it first during a Poison Pen event, and it was just the most perfect description I'd heard. I hadn't thought of it, but it hit every mark that I wanted to hit with it. But the general, elevator pitch is 1952. Evander Mills is drinking his troubles away at a bar and contemplating suicide because he was just fired from the police force after being caught in a raid on a gay club. And a woman sits down next to him and says, I know who you are. I know why you were fired, and I want to hire you to solve the murder of my wife. And with nothing left to lose, Andy goes with her to the titular Lavender House, which is a estate just outside San Francisco, where the LaMontagne family lives. And the LaMontagne family is a soap empire overseen by Irene LaMontagne, who has just passed away. And it has a secret, which is that Irene and her secretary, Pearl, they considered themselves married. And they have a son, Henry, who is also gay. And because it's a family company and it's the soap business in the 50s, they knew he couldn't be a bachelor, so they found him a lesbian wife. So it was these two women, their son, their son's wife, their son's boyfriend, and their daughter-in-law's girlfriend, as well as the daughter-in-law's mother who's come to stay with them, and the entire staff. So almost everyone in the house is queer. And they have this estate that to them has been like a golden cage where they can be themselves inside, but not outside. But now it seems like maybe someone killed someone within that cage and they're all trapped inside with the killer.
And in walks Andy Mills, Evander Mills, who's been hired to see what happened to Irene. And he realizes that after all these years of hiding, his adult life hiding, even being fired for being gay, he now goes into this place where he feels kind of safe.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey for Andy from sort of very repressed. He knows he's queer. He goes to these bars, but he doesn't go to these bars to find friends or community. He's actually afraid of anyone sort of figuring out he's a cop, because then he's open to blackmail. So he goes to these bars to have anonymous hookups, essentially, because he feels very sort of lonely. But at in Lavender House, where he meets these people and he sees their freedom, he gets to experience the allure of what that might be like, to be more openly yourself, to have someone. At one point, he watches the Henry and Cliff, the male couple in the house, at breakfast, and one of them has the head on the other one's shoulder, like while they're holding hands, and it's sort of intriguing and alluring and terrifying to him all at once. And I think Pat, the butler, at one point says to him, out there, you only really get to find yourself when you're pressed up against another man in these like quick, dirty moments. But in here, you are yourself all the time. And what is that like for him?
It's that description shows you all. And when I look over here, I'm looking at the comments, shows you all how touching and emotional. I mean, this is a PI story. It is a murder mystery. It is a locked mansion mystery where the suspects are probably all within these walls. Who knows? And we know that milieu, but this is a different take on that. And the feeling that you evoke from reading and being in Andy's point of view and understanding what he's going through is so marvelous. I mean, you were saying that you told us the plot of this story, that he's on the trail of what happened at Lavender House. And that's great. And it's a good plot. But how did you decide to make this your first adult mystery? Isn't it like this, about this? I mean, where did this come from?
Well, interestingly, it's sort of my first adult mystery. I did have another adult science fiction mystery, and it came from a similar place, which is my love of old noir. I was raised on those Bogart and Bacall movies. I still watch them pretty constantly. I've read everything by Chandler more than once. I love that stuff. And what I did with Depth, the science fiction movie, was I felt like I couldn't write a gay man protagonist in a vintage noir feel, or even a woman. And so I wrote a woman, but I took it to the future in a way that felt like the past.
Oh.
But as time went on, especially publishing gay books in young adult, I felt more freedom to actually try my hand at writing the gay noir I sort of wanted to write when I originally wrote Depth. And that being able to sort of put myself in these movies that I love so much, in this genre, this history, and getting to explore my own history as a queer man, it brought together so many things I've always wanted to do. And so I my writing group, who I've been with forever, told me it was the book I was meant to write. And so I think it was sort of emerged out of everything that I've been working up to when it was time to.
And if you just joined us, you lucky people, we are talking with Lev AC Rosen about his brand new, out today, novel, Lavender House. I love when you hold that up. But the thing about noir, and we understand what noir is, it seems like sad sack guy goes into a situation, meets the femme fatale. She lures him into doing something. All the while we're saying, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. That's a mistake. And he can't help but make mistakes. And then it doesn't end well. And so this starts like that, but it isn't like that. It's not classic. Feels noirish, but it isn't that classic noir progression is the word I'm looking for. Talk about how, and that's one of the reasons I love this book. Talk about that Lev Rosen inspirational, emotional, almost uplifting at the end twist.
Yeah, I think of it as a softer noir.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because you think about the books of the 40s and 30s, and then you think about the movies, which were produced under the Hays Code, and so couldn't really show the same sort of endings as the books, the same sort of bleakness. So you think of movies like, my favorite is The Big Sleep. I love The Big Sleep. I know it makes no sense. I don't care. where it ends and it's like, all right, we're going to lie to the cops. We're going to cover up this murder. We're going to put your sister in asylum for everyone's good. And like, here come the police sirens, but here's us holding each other. And, Bacall says to Bogart, you forgot about one thing. And he says, what's that? She goes, what about me? And he goes, what's wrong with you? And then they hold each other and the sirens. And so there's this idea of them having found each other in all this and them against the world. And that to me is sort of a softer noir because it does have this idea of hope. And I think that being queer in the 50s, being queer in many societies, even today, there is this sort of paranoia that feels very noir. There is a noir state of being queer. But the way to soften it is to find these communities, is to find your people. And that in doing that, it's not just you against the world, it becomes us against the world. And that has hope in it.
And that is such a touching way of looking at it. So, but setting it in the 50s, when you talk about the noir-ishness of it, in the 50s also such a paranoia about it. You say in the back of the book, when your very existence is a crime. Talk a little bit about why you said it then and what difference that would make and how that gave a window on that world and today's world.
Yeah, well, the 50s were so interesting. It's a period in queer history that we generally aren't taught about at all. And partly that's because, we don't talk about queer history before Stonewall generally. But in the 50s, there was this period called the Lavender Scare. And we know about the Red Scare. We know McCarthy era, everyone was a communist. But during that, in 1950, one of the things McCarthy actually said was, also everyone in the State Department is gay. And this became a whole thing. The White House was getting like more letters about people concerned about queer people working for the government than they were communists. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point by sort of 1952-ish where being gay was the same as being communist. Like they were almost interchangeable. And there were newspaper headlines constantly, and they wouldn't have said gay or homosexual necessarily, but they would have said moral weaklings. That was one of the stuff like that, and how those people were in the government. And, that there was this huge paranoia. But in California in 1951, the Black Cat, which is an actual bar that's mentioned in the book, had been raided many times. There were many gay clubs that were raided by the police and shut down because it was illegal to serve liquor in a place where homosexuals were gathering. It was considered a house of ill repute. But this bar owner of the Black Cat got shut down a number of times, and then he decided to sue. He was a straight guy. He owned a gay bar, but he sued. He said, this is ridiculous. My patrons are gay, but they're not doing anything illegal. And he won. The Supreme Court of California said, you're right. Gay people are allowed to have bars. They're not allowed to dance. They're not allowed to kiss. They're not allowed to touch in a way that the police might deem immoral, but they're allowed to gather in bars. And so for this period, gay bars were legal in the state of California. And that resulted in sort of a boom because the police still raided, but they couldn't shut them down just for finding gay people anymore. They had to find other things. They were serving underage people. There were, repeated queer actions going on at the bar, etc. So it is this weird moment of freedom in California in late 51, 52, amidst all this Lavender Scare stuff. And to me, that's just such a fascinating period to explore.
Did you know about this when you went into writing the book, or did you decide to?
Yeah, that's why I picked 1952 specifically, because of that court case.
And what was the name of the court case? Do you remember?
I believe it was Stoneman is the owner of the Black Cat's name. So it would have been Stoneman versus the state of California. And it's Stouman, I think. But
yet in the book, Andy Mills, Evander Mills, was fired because he was because he was queer
and kicked out of his house. Yeah. And that is still legal in many states today. You can get fired for being queer in many states in the United States today. So what has changed, really? But Yeah, so he's caught in a compromising position in the bathroom of the Black Cat and immediately fired from the police force. The police tell his landlord, who kick him out immediately, and they make it known. He becomes a known homosexual, essentially, which ruins a lot of job prospects. And that's what the people in Lavender House are also trying to avoid.
Take us back into the book. We're talking about Lavender House, you all, the brand new book by Lev AC Rosen, which is out today. Well, that's so you named it Lavender House, which has so many layers. Was that always the title? Someone was asking that. Was that always the title of the book? And how happy are you with that?
Yeah, the title came before a lot of the plot. So it comes from the Lavender Scare, and it comes from also the concept of the Lavender Marriage, which is when a gay man and a lesbian would marry for appearances. And this happened in old Hollywood, or it happened if you work for the government and you wanted to keep your job. So it was a way to sort of throw people off. And I knew that I wanted to do a sort of Agatha Christie type locked manor country house mystery. And I thought about Christie titles, and there's Crooked House, which I had watched the movie of recently. Very campy, delightful. And I thought, oh, Lavender House. But then I realized if they're gonna call it that, they have to have another reason. They can't just.
Where the soap came from.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, they're going to grow a lot of flowers then to cover up that name. Why are they growing all these flowers? And I briefly considered perfume, but perfume was sexier and soap was squeaky clean. They needed to preserve their image. So soap it was.
I was going to ask you where you came up with soap, because it's so out of the box of thinking, but then it's so perfect because it washes things away. It's squeaky clean. Everyone needs it. It's so such a normal.
I've been signing books. Keep your hands clean.
I love that. I love that. So you created also. Well, I want to talk about the house itself, the structure of the house, which is amazing. But let's talk about the family who lives there, the LaMontagne family. How did you come up with each of the characters, and how did you come up with that dynasty and that lineage?
Oh, I mean, once I knew, like I said, going in, Lavender Marriage uniting the family, and I knew soap, and then it was sort of like, how would this work? And I figured if someone had a kid, it would be but now has a lover of the same sex. Probably they are a widow or widower. And I decided on widow because it feels more reasonable for a widow to run a company than a widower, who hasn't remarried, in terms of public perception. So I didn't want to deal with what it would mean for this widower to be running a soap company. So that's where Irene came from. And I knew I wanted her to be sort of unpleasant, but really sympathetic and like really protective. And so that she's so many things in terms of like, what motherhood is, both the good and the bad. And that's where she emerged from, and like what it would be like for her to die and leave this family behind. And she was the first one to really come out of things. And from there, they sort of fell into sort of Christie ideas. You watch Agatha Christie, and there's like the staid one. There's the drunk, dancy femme fatale. There's the
misunderstood one, and the weak one, and the malleable one, sure, and they're all suspects.
Yes, and I wanted to play with those archetypes. So the drunk one who's dancing around in his underwear becomes the boyfriend, and like, why is he drunk? And we have to get into like the psychology of that, who he really is, and why he's in this situation. And so much of it comes from exploring those types and deciding why they are those types, and especially in relationship to their place within this house. So Margo is one of my favorites. Margo is like such a fun character to write because she signed up for this but she maybe didn't exactly realize what she was getting into. And so we have Margo, who embodies the perfect housewife in public and goes to parties and talks up the soap. But like, they found her in a bar wearing a biker jacket, you know, like, and they were like, hey, you want to be rich? You want to live the life you want? Come with us. But you have to transform into this woman, this like perfect display of heteronormative femininity. What does that do to a person where you get everything you want, but at the expense of who you thought you were?
And isn't that that's the whole book, though, isn't it? I mean, that reminds me, I just have the Walter Mosley quote, who Walter Mosley gave you a marvelous quote. And the last line of it is, Rosen's smart, bittersweet tale plays with the oldest truth of all, the price we pay for our identity in America.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think when you read that?
Oh my God, that was such a great day.
So how did you
the day I saw that blurb, because I really, really, really wanted a blurb from Walter Mosley. And I'm lucky enough that my friend Sally Ann, who's been helping me out with this book, knows him, and she was like, I can approach him. And she did, and you know, she talked it up to him, and he gave me that blurb, and it was just, yeah, it's wonderful to see moments when people really understand what you're going for, like the review you read earlier, like just such a beautiful review, and it feels like it hits everything you were trying to do, and it's someone saying, yes, you did everything right.
And they got it. They recognized it.
Yeah.
The level of understanding that someone has to have to get that, because they have to have the background to know where you were going, and then they have to have the skill to see that you really pulled it off, that you made it work. Let's go back quickly to the which you indeed did. Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because as we were talking earlier, the book begins in this classic movie way: guy in a bar drinking, in walks the femme fatale, and then you turn that on its head. And even within that, Andy, and sort of monitoring what he's doing and what he's saying and what he's thinking, is sort of like, I don't know, I'm acting like a tough guy. Maybe this is like a tough guy. And there's that wonderful line that I love when the woman walks in, and Andy thinks to himself, she could ask me to kill her husband any minute now. She's right out of an old movie. And you just see that. But there's this level of meta story, because it is a noir, and he is in a noir, but then he understands noir, and he's realizing that he is noir, and then you're writing all that, if that makes any sense to you all.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the fun things to play with, especially these days, you look at it was Lauren Bacall in, is it Key Largo, where
with the lips together.
Yeah, you know, you do know how to whistle, don't you? And like, that is such a beautiful moment. But nowadays, it's like a little campy. There's no, like, you look at it, I think of things like Jessica Rabbit, you know, who is a noir icon, but she is a camp noir icon. You know, I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way. Like, classic line.
Right.
And there is this level of camp because of this old-fashionedness, because it has become so archetypal, the idea of the detective and the, you know, woman is sitting down next to him and saying, kill my husband, that you have to like sort of ride a line between something that's genuinely emotive and feels genuinely mysterious and moody and noir, but can still embrace that level of campiness that's going to happen. Because I love that. I love the moment. You know, I love Anybody Got a Light.
Yeah.
I think that's Key Largo and Have and Have Not as Whistle, right?
Oh,
but
I'm going to be thinking about this the rest of the day. It'll be fun to research.
Oh yeah, no, I'm looking this up immediately after this.
Margaret will look it up. Look up where "Put Your Lips Together and Blow" comes from. We'll find out.
But I love those moments because they are a little over the top, and they are at the same time convey so much about a character. So being able to sort of have those moments in a book for a modern audience,
yes,
that feels like it's still mysterious and noir, but not leaning too far into the campiness, is a line I really love to run right up to and dance on. And I worry sometimes I fall over it, but it's, to me, it's what makes noir memorable, are those lines, are those moments. And so I
And
wanted to have some.
and the people who get it on a couple of levels will get it. And the people who don't connect with it on those levels will still love it. I mean, that's the other thing too. You know, you can't just play to one audience.
I mean, I hope so.
Totally so, totally so. Margaret is saying Lauren Bacall and To Have and Have Not. Everybody's saying Lauren, everybody's saying To Have and Have Not. And Darlene is saying, sounds like this book will start a lot of conversations. There's Mary Garrett is saying there's a similar thrill for a reviewer when the author responds, "You get me," which sounds like it also could be in a noir as well. You get me. I can hear any number of people saying that. Let's quickly, we're running out of time. It's so crazy. I have so many more things to ask you, and I know that our audience does as well. So keep those questions coming. Vicky is saying your enthusiasm is contagious. Yes, indeed, it is. Let me ask you about that before we ask about the house. It feels, reading this book, reading Lavender House, which is what we are talking about today, it feels like, and I know how difficult it is to write a book, but it feels like you must have had so much fun writing it. The dialogue and the banter and the setting and the clothes and the descriptions and, you know, the fashion, all of that, cars. It's all great. It's all just great. What was it? Was it fun to write?
Oh, yeah. No, it's so much fun to write. And especially having just finished a second draft of the sequel, like being able to get into the, which takes place even more in the city, being able to get into like the details of 1950s stuff. I have a whole book on like San Francisco department stores of the
I wondered about your research.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, research. I owe so much to Nan Alamilla Boyd's Wide Open Town, which is a history of queer San Francisco up until 1965. That was like my Bible.
What's that title again, and author?
Nan Alamilla Boyd, and the book is Wide Open Town.
I know Margo will find that for us.
Oh, yeah. It's been out for decades, I think, at this point.
What did you find in it did you just gasp every day at the amazing stuff?
I've reread it like more than once now, and I feel like I find new things every time because there's so much information. And even as I'm taking notes, you know, it some of it goes right through, some of it you can't use, but there's so much stuff that you could take in about San Francisco, just not just the number of gay bars that were happening in the 50s, but like the variety of them. Yeah. The fact that female impersonators used to advertise in the papers for people to come, because that's what they were called then. They weren't called drag queens yet. And straight people used to go enjoy these shows, and that's been going on since the 30s. So there's all these details. And because queer history is constantly sort of erased or talked over, or just lost because our families don't operate in the same way of handing down history, I think that there's always something new to discover. And I love discovering queer history and being able to sort of tell it to other queer people in the world, because, and this might come from writing for young adults too, but knowing your history as a queer person, it helps you sort of establish your place in the world. And, you know, most of us are born into families that pass down our culture. Certainly my Judaism, I learned from my parents, but my queerness, I had to find queer elders essentially and learn from them and figure out, oh, these are my people. These are the battles we've had. These are the things we've gone through. And so being able to deliver that history in the form of like a fun mystery, to me, is such a gift. It's such a gift to be able to do that.
Well, you are such a gift, Lev Rosen. There is no question about it. Look at the comments when we're finished today, because I want you to see the deep affection and the deep enthusiasm for this book. And people are already saying sequel, sequel, sequel. So there is a sequel.
There is a sequel, The Bell in the Fog. It'll be out next fall. And I can tell you a little about it. It gets a little, yeah, it gets a little into spoiler territory, but
Oh,
after,
don't spoil. But
I mean, at the end of Lavender House, there is a setup that Andy is offered and which he takes.
and more we cannot say. All right, let's do
And that feels good.
that. I think that we know that Andy isn't going to die. We'll just tell you that.
Yes, I feel comfortable with that information. And so he ends up as a PI, and he's having trouble with that job, however. And then one day into his office walks a figure from his past. And that, I get to play with another trope there.
I get goosebumps.
So, and I'm really excited about it because it gets into lots of queer bars and, the Navy in particular, and the way the Navy and being queer in the Navy during World War II was, which was another.
And one of your characters in Lavender House talks about that as well.
Yeah, and so I get to really get into that. And that, World War II was such a fascinating time for queer people too, because all of a sudden so many people were drafted and funneled towards cities, and queer people found each other in the military for the first time. And the military had deeply all over the place views on homosexuality, which changed over the course of the war and made being a gay soldier or sailor more and more difficult and paranoid as time went on.
Can you see? I mean, you all can see why I love this book so much on so many levels. And I have a million more questions that we just don't have time for, but let me ask you to reveal. I have this copy of the book, and my real copy of the book is on the way, but you have the actual, the super advanced version. This is what they looked like when it first came out. And Lev has what it looks like now, with an amazing cover by Katie Klimowitz and Colin Verde. Is that his name? Colin Verde?
Yeah.
And this book has so many secrets in the cover. To show us a little bit of some of the secrets.
I will. First of all, it does sometimes take people more than one glance to realize that there's a silhouette there. But then also there's one dead rabbit. All the rabbits have spot glaze, so it's shiny. You can see the Lavender House is shiny, but all the living rabbits also have that on their eyes. And I'm trying to hold it at an angle to get that, but I'm not sure I can. And then on the back, there is another hidden rabbit.
Oh, we can see it. That's great.
And then on the inside, in the very back here, there's one more rabbit.
You all need to go get Lavender House so you can have your own rabbits and find the other secrets in this gorgeous cover from Forge. One Forge book. Someone is saying, "Is one dead rabbit spooky enough for you?" Says Margaret in the back room. That's quite hilarious. So let's think about taking some questions now, if you have time.
Yeah, absolutely.
For them. You were talking quickly though about how this isn't your first book. You've been writing young adult books. Has it been great to be in this new group? I mean, did you always want to be a writer? How did this happen?
Oh man, I mean, I've been writing for a very long time. I remember in grade school, I went to a very strange experimental grade school with 18 kids in my whole grade. And when we graduated, one teacher gets up and like says something really nice about you and like what you do. And the English teacher got up and said, Lev is a wizard with words. He's destined to be a writer. So that was by 8th grade. So it feels like something I've been doing forever. I don't have a distinct memory of like deciding. It was just sort of always there. And I went to undergraduate and majored in creative writing, and I went to grad school for creative writing, and my first book was out about a decade ago, maybe more at this point, maybe 11 years. And I write all over the place. So I've written 2 adult, 2 middle grade, 2 young adult, and this is my 3rd adult. And they're all different genres and they're all different vibes because I don't know. I I read everything, so I write everything, if that makes sense.
And it sounds like you really love it and embrace it and enjoy this life of being a writer. It must be very rewarding to you.
Yeah, no, being able to see my stories out there and knowing that they're finding readers who need them, and like getting mail from people, and even if it's just like one piece of key mail from someone. I had one book that was that did not do great, but I did get an email from someone about how it made them cry because it spoke to them so much in their own struggle dealing with their mother who had Alzheimer's, which is kind of what the book is about. And reading that email made that book worthwhile. Like knowing that the book found the person it needed to, knowing that I had put it out into the world to help that person in a moment. That's really important to me. But of course, also, I just want to entertain.
Well, this is entertaining. Absolutely. So we are talking about, oh, my iPad just died. There it comes. Lavender House by Lev AC Rosen. And he would love to take some of your questions right now. I want you, I remember, Lev, to go look. You should remember to go look at the comments afterward, because
I absolutely will.
Vicky Gregory says, fascinating discussion. Janine says, I want that book, the one that didn't do so well. Hannah Mary McKinnon is saying, tell us about your brooch.
Oh, yeah. So I'm mirrored, so I don't know where I am. This is an actual 1950s pressed dried flower brooch. So, all right, there we go.
Oh, gorgeous. Wow. Think about the person who made that, you know.
I don't know. I found it. A friend found it on Etsy and was like, you need this for your book tour. And I was like, you were right. I do.
Yeah, a magic flower brooch. Everybody needs one. Sylvia, that's a great question, Hannah. Sylvia says, how long does a story simmer in your brain before landing on your paper or computer screen?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think every book writes itself differently, which is an important thing to remember. But generally, once I have an idea, once I have like a concept and I can sort of summarize it in a sentence and be like, this is what I'm doing, and I've written that down, then either I will start writing it or I will write it down and put it on my bulletin board, which is right behind my computer here. And I will let it sit there until I have time to get to it.
Yeah. I mean, there's in the book, I have it right here, called Big Magic, I think it is. It talks about how the universe gives us an idea, and we need to take it, we need to claim it, or it will go to someone else. Is that how you feel when you write them down?
I mean, I don't know about claiming it per se, but when I write it down, it's more, yes, this is an idea worth pursuing at some point. Don't forget about it, because I'll forget about it otherwise in 2 days. But this one I wrote immediately. So yeah, this one I was like, I want this. I want to do this right now. And I think that's part of it too, is like maybe, some of these ideas I'm looking at, I'm like, those are good ideas that I would like to get to eventually. Yes. But none of them had that moment of, oh, I want to do this right now.
And that's a very special thing. We recognize that as authors, I think, when we get that idea. I'm hoping somebody will ask you about the actual house in Lavender House. Is it based on a real place?
Oh, no, I totally made it up.
You did all the staircases and the bathroom and the shelves and the lab and the basement and the dining room and the kitchen and the doors and all those kinds of things. I
looked at a lot of Better Homes and Gardens style magazines from the 1950s. I could hold them up, but it's over on the other side of the room.
So this is a completely fictional house.
Yeah, I think technically location-wise, it's actually in a national park that it was a national park in the 1950s. So
you've been there, we just don't know.
Yeah.
Anissa, our darling Anissa, is saying, do you start with the characters or setting first?
Ooh, I think every book writes itself differently, like I said, so it varies. But I think that once I have an idea, like a concept, like gay Agatha Christie, but noir writing, from there I went to, the characters. I did do the setting and sort of knew it was a house surrounded by flowers. but I didn't know the vibe of the house, until the singed fountain, stuff like that, until after I had figured out who Andy was. Because
And
that was
Andy is
just
just such an instantly, iconically wonderful character who we love right away. I urge you all to read Lavender House. And Darlene is asking character names. How do you pick them? I was saying earlier that I keep trying to make an anagram of that Lavender House and Lev AC Rosen and Evander Mills, your main characters.
I am 90% sure that before my next few weeks are over, I will sign a book, Lavender House. It will happen. I can feel it in my bones. I will start writing the Lev, and it'll just go right into the ender.
And it's meant to be. I mean, it's so of itself. It's completely gorgeous. I know there are lots of other questions. We are crazily. Oh, here's a question from Renee. You don't find the word queer derogatory or offensive? I've heard from other gay authors that they don't like being called or using queer.
Yeah, so that's something that is discussed within the LGBTQIA plus community. I am fine with it. I'm also fine with gay. I prefer queer just because to me it's an umbrella term. It doesn't it doesn't have as strict a meaning per se, but you understand hopefully what I mean when I say it, which is that, I'm a guy who's married to a guy. And, I am a millennial, so I feel like that our generation did re-embrace the term, and certainly there are many people though who absolutely hate the term and prefer not to use it or be called it. And obviously if someone says they're gay, you call them gay, you don't sub in queer. But I've never had a problem with it. And then you look at other authors, Joseph Hansen, whose books have just been reissued, Fade Out, which were in 1970s and have a gay detective, except he didn't like the word gay. He only wanted homosexual.
Oh.
So I think terms evolve, things change, and you should use whatever label suits you and expresses who you are most accurately, you feel most accurately, and other people should respect that. But for me, queer is fine, gay is fine.
And great that we can talk about it. That's a huge step. That is a huge step.
I think there's something more aesthetically pleasing about the word queer too. It bounces.
And that's what we all hope for in our descriptions of ourselves.
Yes, I want a bouncy descriptor.
And final, no more questions, you all. We are running out of time, but I do want to know this too. Sylvia wants to know, have you considered or attempted screenwriting? This is an open door for you, Lev, to say something.
I've written a television pilot or two. And that's all. And I have an agent who does great work with my books and with my other stuff. So that's all I'm saying at this point.
Do you see him blushing, you all? He's totally blushing. There's no question about it.
I hope I'm wearing enough foundation to hide any blush.
This is a guy who's keeping a secret right now from us, and we will invite you back to tell us all about it. And we do hope you'll come back for Belle and the
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Go get writing, because I cannot wait to read it. Let's give away a copy of Lavender House to one lucky person. Here goes the Wheel of Fun, and we will spin the Wheel of Fun. Isn't this great? And see who wins this book. And I love this. It's fantastic. And the winner is Anissa Armstrong. You have this book, don't you, Anissa? Let's spin it again. And if you don't have it, Anissa, I'll just send a book to somebody else as well. So Margaret, can we spin one more time? And of course, Anissa, you win. You get your copy, but I know you've read it. And Vicki Gregory wins a copy as well. We want to spread the word about Lavender House, so I want to make sure someone gets it who has not. Oh, Anissa says, no, I don't. Okay, sweetheart, you're going to get a book too. So Vicki and Anissa will each get a copy of Lavender House, and we will make that happen. Lev, you are such a rock star. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you. And you're the rock star, truly.
My goodness. Well, I love your book, as you well know. So much joy and happiness continuing with the Andy Mills series and with whatever you write. Your fan club has grown by many, many, many.
Yeah, I got 3 books out next year, so hang on.
Oh, let us know. Do let us know. Keep track of
Yep.
this and let us know. Let me, before we go and before I say goodbye to you, please come back next Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET, because look who we have. Need I Say More? The fantastic Lisa Unger will be here live with Secluded Cabin Sleeps 6, which just got put into the Library Journal Hall of Fame. So, hey, this is a fantastic book. It's marvelous. Lisa Unger is a genius and brilliant, and I cannot wait for you all to hear about Secluded Cabin Sleeps 6 next Tuesday on First Chapter Fun. And I happen to know that it came out of something that happened to Lisa and her family during the pandemic. So that's scary. And scarily wonderful is Lev. Oops, I'm getting the light out of this. Lev AC Rosen's Lavender House, happiest above days, Lev. And congratulations on a marvelous book.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
It's
always a treat to talk to you, Hank.
Oh my goodness. You can join us in person, right? Here in Boston.
Yeah, in a few weeks.
Harvard Bookstore on November the 4th.
It'll be fun. It'll be the first time we've met in person.
Isn't that so crazy? I'll bring a little box to put around my head so it feels like I'm in my little Zoom square.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'll help me, keep calm.
Yeah, I am. All right, you all. Thank you for being here at Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze today. Another wonderful day. This is such a treat to talk to these authors and to see all of you in the comments. And you know that Lev and I will look at the comments as soon as the show is over. So I will see you next Tuesday. And remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much for coming.